stripper motivation. So, it was the end of the quarter at an office in San Diego. The team had their goals, survived budget cuts, and only 3 people had cried in the bathroom that week. So, it's safe to say everyone was in a great mood. And as a way of keeping the morale and work energy high, Susan, the office manager, came up with the bright idea to hire a motivational speaker. That made sense. I mean, getting the office someone that'll lift morale, spark energy, and inspire productivity is a great way to build team spirit. So Susan hits the internet and Googles motivational performers, which was a big mistake because performers key her to the profile of a woman named Candy. Candy's profile bio promises to boost energy, inspire confidence, and leave the audience speechless. Susan, who clearly skim-read this on her lunch break while chewing plantain chips, basically thought Candy was perfect TED Talk material. Now, on the big day, the break room had been transformed. There were streamers, soda, and a suspicious-looking tray of meat pies. Everyone's gathered around, pretending to be excited, but mostly just waiting for free food and a chance to leave early. And then, the doors swing open and a woman who looks like she's just walked off the set of Magic Mite Office Edition struts in. She's in high heels so high they qualify as small ladders. She's got glitter in places glitter should never be, and barely has any clothes on. The room falls into stunned silence. One guy chokes on a puff, and every single person is looking at Susan with serious confusion. Susan is also wondering what was even happening. Well, as it turns out, Candy was actually a stripper, and she wastes no time. She grabbed a chair, winked at the CEO, and launched into what can only be described as an interpretive dance of empowerment and pelvic thrusts. At this point, 2 people have left the room. One is laughing uncontrollably, the other is hyperventilating into a paper plate. The intern tries to make eye contact with the ceiling. The janitor walks in, takes one look, says nope, and walks back out. And as for Candy, she's committed. She does a full routine with props, glitter, whipped cream, and a whip. Once Candy finishes her keynote performance, she bowed, grabbed a can of Coca-Cola, and moonwalked out like she just dropped the mic on a TED stage. Everyone is completely silent before someone finally asks if that was the motivational speaker. Karen from HR looked like she just aged 5 years, while the CEO looked like he just swallowed his tongue. Toilet paper tracker. It all started on a completely normal Monday morning. The office coffee machine was sputtering out its daily dose of mediocrity, and everything seemed business as usual. Until Reggie walked out of the restroom like he had just discovered a dead body. Reggie, the facilities manager, was a man of strict habits and tighter khakis. He always had a clipboard in hand, brow permanently furrowed, and a personality best described as Microsoft Excel, but meaner. Well, that morning, he gathered the office in the break room, looked everyone dead in the eyes, and straight up told them that they were going through too much toilet paper. Some people chuckled, thinking it was a joke, but Reggie was dead serious. This wasn't a prank, this was a mission. The next day, an Excel file mysteriously appeared in the shared company folder titled Toilet Paper Usage Log. There were columns for the date, the time of visit, employee initials, whether it was a number 1 or a number 2, and, get this, approximate number of squares used. Yes, really. Reggie even had it color-coded. Green stood for under 10 squares, yellow represented 10 to 20 squares, while red was 21 plus squares. He then had the audacity to ask them to be honest about it because according to him, it was about fairness and not shame, which is exactly what people say when they're about to shame you. The most insane part about this story is that the whole thing wasn't laughed off and deleted. Reggie even began enforcing it. He'd send daily reminders. At one point, he started cross-referencing usage patterns with time card entries. People were afraid to sneeze in the bathroom, let alone wipe freely. So, of course, the often descended into silent chaos. One employee began using a coffee shop bathroom across the street. Another started smuggling in their own toilet paper roll from home like it was contraband. HR finally intervened, and higher-ups pulled Reggie into a meeting which one assumes involved a very long sigh. He was instructed firmly to delete the spreadsheet and never again request poop metrics from coworkers. Restroom misconduct. This crazy situation happened at a call center in the Midwest called Dial-Up Solutions Incorporated, because their internet wasn't the only thing sketchy. It's around 3 p.m., that time of day when everyone's just trying to make it to clock out without throwing their headset out the window, when an employee called Jessica decided to horrify everybody around her. So Jessica is at her desk in a cubicle, surrounded by other coworkers answering calls and avoiding emails, when out of nowhere she just starts changing her sanitary pad at her desk. I'm not kidding. No bathroom, no shame, no, hey, maybe I should go to the restroom like every other functioning adult. Just right there in full view like it's the most normal midday activity ever. And the rest of the office is losing it. Now, you'd think maybe it was a one-time thing, right? Like maybe she had a moment of judgment lapse or a personal emergency. Nope, this was recurring. Like full-on morning and evening performances. In fact, she had a routine. Someone eventually left an anonymous sticky note that said and asked her, please get her situation sorted in the frickin' restroom. Honestly, what took them so long? Anyway, HR finally gets wind of it, and Jessica has issued a 2-strike warning for her inappropriate behavior. I mean, not to point out the obvious, but bathrooms exist for a reason, and even though they're not glamorous and never have enough paper towels and the lighting makes everyone look like a vampire, they're the only place where you're supposed to do your private business. Not the open floor plan where people eat, breathe, and try to forget they once saw a woman swap out a maxi pad next to the company fax machine. The creepy coworker. It all began when the office's shared server started lagging. Designers were trying to access client files, but Photoshop was crawling like it had one foot in the grave. Naturally, Lydia, the office manager, called in IT Dave, who immediately began his investigation to try and solve the problem. As he scanned the shared drive, something strange appeared. A folder tucked deep inside Mark's user directory labeled, "For later, do not open." Mark was the company's graphic designer. Well, Dave opened the folder because, let's be honest, telling an IT guy not to open a folder is like telling a raccoon not to dig through the trash. And inside the folder, Dave found a disturbing treasure trove of over 100 Photoshop files. All of them featuring a female coworker's face rudely superimposed onto graphic adult images. Some shockingly explicit, some just weirdly detailed. Like, who photoshops someone onto a Victorian oil painting of a nude duchess? Dave, instantly regretting all his life choices, called Lydia, who gasped so loud the break room microwave probably popped open. Mark was immediately pulled into a conference room, and the HR manager, called in from the company's corporate office, used the phrase egregious digital misconduct approximately 6 times. Jess, the coworker whose face was assaulted, was understandably traumatized, so she took time off and later filed a restraining order. The company offered therapy and tightened digital policies. So no more personal folders on the server, no more staying late alone, and no more Mark. Faking cancer. So it was around early March 2019, and somewhere in the Midwest of the United States, employees of a cozy little insurance company were busy doing their regular work things, like typing furiously as if their keyboards owed them money and pretending to care during meetings. When suddenly, an announcement rocks the entire office. The manager, Janine Anderson, gathers the team, sits them down, and, with the acting skills of a Hollywood A-lister, drops the bombshell that she's been diagnosed with stage 3 cancer. Janine even names the hospital doctor and treatment plan. Everybody is crying, feeling extremely sad and sorry. In April 2019, this lady shaved her head and the whole office rallied around her. People started bringing her meals. There's a card going around every week. She even gets paid time off, a flexible schedule, and a full-on "you're such a warrior" speech. However, by June 2019, the cracks in her lies begin to show. First, she forgot the name of her chemotherapy drug during a convo and claimed her treatment was experimental, which makes it hard to verify. Also, a coworker spots her jogging in the park with energy. Weird. Next, someone on the team finds a new Instagram account with pictures of Janine sitting by the pool looking tanned and glowy. Then in October 2019, after the office started piecing together the little lies, someone from the team finally decided to Google it. They called the hospital she claimed she was attending and, well, the hospital had no patient by that name. The company launches an internal investigation and it turns out she made the whole thing up. From diagnosis to treatment to baldness, it was all one giant Oscar-worthy scam. When she was brought into HR for questioning, she claimed she did it all for pity and attention. This lady straight up manipulated everyone and used their kindness, fake vulnerability, and took their support like it was a free coffee refill. One coworker literally canceled their vacation to help cover for Janine during her darkest days. But as it turns out, Janine was in Cancun during those darkest days. Well, she was fired and sued for fraud because the company wanted their paid leave money back. Rightfully so. After spending a day in an office like this, I bet you'd want to just go home, relax, and have a good time with some great company. Polybuzz AI's got you covered with free, private, no-limits AI character chats. Whether you're into immersive roleplay or casual vibes, their library of over 20 million characters has endless options, plenty to match any mood. Advanced tech makes these AI personalities feel human with authentic voices to boot. Can't find the perfect chat buddy? Create your own and share it with the community for infinite possibilities. Grab the Polybuzz app now and use my promo code AB321 for premium perks. The HR rep who was the problem. So, Mia Corley was a 28-year-old marketing associate who loved iced coffee, true crime podcasts, and not being made uncomfortable at work. But unfortunately, she had been dealing with some weird behavior from her manager, Steve. We're talking about the accidental shoulder touches, the weird comments, and once during a meeting, he even complimented her dimples in the most unprofessional way possible. So, Mia goes to Greg in HR to complain about how uncomfortable Steve has been making her. She lays it all out, the comments, the uncomfortable encounters, the tension. Greg nods thoughtfully and then tells her that's just how Steve was with everybody and maybe she was just misinterpreting things. Excuse me? That's like someone robbing your house and the cops going, maybe he just really liked your furniture. Well, poor Mia leaves HR feeling gaslit and confused, and the subtle harassment escalates, to the point that other people in the office start to notice. Suddenly, Mia's tasks were getting reassigned, her performance reviews tanked, and her desk was moved right next to the printer, which, by the way, beeps constantly and smells like betrayal. Eventually, other coworkers start to notice this, and one finally comes to tell her to go report the misconduct. However, they told her not to go to Greg because apparently he's besties with Steve. Yeah, they were besties, golf buddies, and Greg was even best man at Steve's wedding. Yeah, Steve was married. So when employees complain about Steve to Greg, he just walks up to him and rats them out. Mia even got accused of being uncooperative. But finally, Mia had enough. She gathered receipts like a tax accountant during bonus season. There were screenshots, emails, meeting notes, time-stamped awkward encounters, and even had a recording of Steve offering her a massage. Ugh. Mia went above their heads, straight to corporate HR, who saw the evidence and said, bet? Greg was escorted out faster than you can say toxic work environment, while Steve got demoted so hard he now shares a cubicle with the office plant. Honestly, he should have gotten fired too. The fake employee scam. In the ever-evolving jungle of remote work where cameras are off and microphones are muted, sits one IT guy named Dan. You see, Dan wasn't just good at his job, he was too good. He was smart, sneaky, and had just the right amount of chaos and was able to pull off one of the most bizarre and kind of impressive scams in modern workplace history. He created 3 fake employees and got the company to pay them salaries for an entire year. Yes, you heard that right. Dan got paid for people who did not exist. Dan realized something many of us dream of but never actually act on. He could do everyone's job and take everyone's paycheck. Plus, being in IT gave him access to the sacred trinity of workplace power: onboarding systems, employee databases, and the ultimate weapon, admin rights. With these tools, Dan could do anything. He could create new email accounts, set up fake Slack profiles, and even onboard imaginary people into the system and funnel the cash into separate bank accounts. So, like the digital Dr. Frankenstein he was, Dan gave life to 3 fictional workers. The first was Sarah W., the introverted data analyst who never turned on her camera. Then there was Louis D., the quiet developer whose mic never worked. And finally, Tina R., the mysterious UX designer who nobody ever saw. To cover his tracks, Dan made all 3 of them remote-only hires. That way, there was zero expectation of in-office sightings, and every camera-off meeting was just another normal Tuesday. Dan didn't stop at creating them. No, he became them. When Sarah had to send emails, Dan wrote them. When Louis had to attend meetings, Dan used a voice filter and did the talking. And when Tina was asked to present a UX update, Dan screen shared a mock-up he found on Pinterest. He scheduled conflicting meetings, technical issues, and even PTO days for each of them to avoid too much spotlight. He played the long game masterfully, as each employee had different time zones, personalities, and communication styles. Dan even gave Tina a fun little Slack quirk where she'd only respond to messages with LMAO and a random GIF. And people honestly found her relatable. The craziest part is, the company never noticed. Apparently, Dan was doing all the work and doing it well. He basically became a one-man Avengers squad, coding, analyzing, designing, and collecting these superhero-sized salaries of 4 employees. However, it all started to unravel during what should have been an innocent little team-building exercise. This time, it was a mandatory cameras-on virtual group photo. But of course, Sarah was having connectivity issues, Louis was in Mexico with no signal, and Tina said her camera shattered during a recent self-reflection moment. Very convenient. That's when HR started to raise eyebrows, and once HR starts squinting, you know the end credits are rolling. They began digging, and what they found could have been the plot of a Netflix true crime docuseries. All accounts were being accessed from the same IP address. Login times overlapped perfectly, and the expense reports for the 3 fake employees all shared one shipping address: Dan's apartment. They even found a company-purchased Amazon order for 3 headsets, all delivered to Dan. Dan was fired on the spot. HR escorted him out, and the company filed lawsuits. The company had to explain to upper management, and probably their investors, how they paid close to $300,000 to what was basically AI-less chat GPT bots with better cover stories. So, honestly, if Dan was able to do 4 jobs and do them well, why wouldn't you just keep him on and give him a reasonable raise? Come on!